instead, I'm going to go to Brian Bennett, follow my own rule, and go to Brian Bennett from the LA Times.
I wanted to talk about the thorny issues in the headlines right now, which is cybersecurity and elections. So when the DNC was hacked, initially they decided not to go directly to the FBI and DHS. They hired a private security firm to look at the attack and mitigate it. Then those emails appeared online, and the FBI got involved. There's also a question of there are a number of voting machines in counties that are electronic and digital, and some of them are connected to the internet. So I wanted to get a sense for you of what the vulnerabilities are, what your assessment of the DNC hack is, and should the government be looking at elections as a piece of critical infrastructure, or should the government just try to stay out of it as much as possible?
Sounds like Brian's been in our internal deliberations lately. But
Hopefully not hacking into them, but anyway.
A couple of things. First, as everybody knows, the FBI is investigating the DNC hack. We are not at this point prepared to attribute it to a particular actor or actors. That investigation continues. Separate and apart from that, and this is not a comment on the DNC hack in particular, but a general observation. This is something that I preach generally. First, basic employee education and awareness about the hazards of spear phishing. Everybody in this room, I suspect, at your respective employers has received an email that is an attempt at spear phishing. And simply by not opening the email or the attachment to the email that looks suspicious to you or you don't recognize can make a huge difference. This is a general comment. The most devastating intrusive attacks by the most sophisticated actors often originate with a simple act of spear phishing. So employer awareness, education can raise that bar and make a huge, huge difference. In DHS, for example, we run exercises where we'll send employees emails like free Washington Redskins tickets, click here. And the excited Redskins fan clicks on the attachment. They're told to report at a certain time and place to pick up their free Redskins tickets, and they get a cybersecurity lecture instead. So there's that. Observation and comment number two, whether in government or the private sector, if there's an incident, call us, and call us right away. Call the department, contact the Department of Homeland Security right away to get us in there early, whether without a private cybersecurity expert or with a private cybersecurity expert. I thought that last week's PPD 41 on cybersecurity in a very clever way clarifies the roles of the different federal agencies in cybersecurity and delineates between threat response and asset response. Threat response is responding to the crime, and asset response is fixing and patching the vulnerability. So in the simplest of terms, I am the fireman and Jim Comey is the cop. And you call one or both of us, and hopefully do so very, very soon after the incident. Third observation I'll make is, and again, this is not a comment about the most recent DNC event, but there's a lot that goes into attribution. There's a lot in terms of the investigative process and a lot of factors that go into attribution, a lot of considerations that go into attribution that are within and without the cybersecurity context. And so those are my thoughts. Now, on the election process, we are actively thinking about election cybersecurity right now. Now, the issue with the election process is, as you know, there's no one federal election system. There are some 9,000 jurisdictions across this country involved in the election process. So when there's a national election for president, there are some 9,000 jurisdictions that participate and contribute to collecting votes, tallying votes, and reporting votes. States, cities, counties, who all have their own way of doing business, down to the nature of the ballots, the nature of how votes are collected and tabulated. And so after the 2000 election, Congress passed HAVA, and there was a commission created by HAVA that was dedicated at the national level to the security around the election processes across the country. That commission actually, I think, did a lot of good and raised the bar quite significantly, but there's more to do. The nature of cyber threats has evolved since 2002, since 2003. And so I do think that we should carefully consider whether our election system, our election process, is critical infrastructure, like the financial sector, like the power grid. The election process contributes to, there's a vital national interest in our election process. So I do think we need to consider whether it should be considered by my department and others critical infrastructure, which has several implications. And it becomes very much part of our focus. There are some short-term, long-term things I think that we should do to bolster the cybersecurity around the election process. I am considering communicating with election officials across the country about best practices in the short term. There are some best practices that exist, and I think we need to share those best practices with state and local election officials soon. And then I think that there are probably longer-term investments we need to make in the cybersecurity of our election process. I think that there are various different points in the process that we have to be concerned about. So this is something that we're very focused on right at the moment.